I am a mindset development specialist, the founder of the Mindset Development Institute. And basically what we do there is that we work with organizations, executives, and business leaders to help them to create critical mindsets for success. So we developed different thinking models around what you aim to achieve. Our special focus is on leadership, effective communication, emotional intelligence, high performance, and also entrepreneurship. I'm also the Vice President of the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, which covers quite a few of the countries in the Southern Africa part. I'm married with 5 children. It's okay. I'm doing my bit. Yeah. So my biggest university is my own home, where I get to learn a lot about mindsets, actually, to look at different kids that are under the same leadership structure, but then having their own way of thinking, which is pretty much what company is about. For me, and the way I normally think about companies is that it's a family structure. So normally this is what I normally would do. I have this 2 triangles. The one triangle pointing up and the other triangle pointing down. What that basically means is this, is that whatever is at the top is normally less at the bottom. Whatever is more at the bottom is more at the top. So if you think about a leadership in that way, there are 3 different sections to that. The top part is the leadership itself. So at the top of leadership, that's where the highest concentration of power is, highest concentration of responsibility, accountability, influence, instruction, teaching, and more independence is right at the top. So in the family structure, that normally would be your parents. At the bottom, you have your children. And at the bottom there, that's where you have more of the followers. That's where more the learning is. That's where more the dependence is. That's where the people are looking more sensitive to the changes. There's less room for independent decision. There's more following of instructions. But then if you think about the triangle, then it makes this little diamond in the middle, which is where actually the crux of the matter is. And there in the middle is where the biggest contention is for all of us. And that's where the equality is. That's where the actual value of you as a person is. You see, the 2 top parts, they're transactional, they're hierarchical, they're also definitive based on the job description, based on the functions that each of those particular roles have to fulfill. Even though those are very clear and everybody can be doing their work, as long as the middle part is not sorted out, there'll always be contention and there'll be some degree of grief. For example, if I'm feeling like I'm only being harvested, I like to use that word, for my skills, for my intelligence, for my experience, but it is not meshed with a reward, whether it be the monetary reward, whether it be the respect, whether it be the acknowledgement of my contribution, then I feel like I'm being used, even though we still are fulfilling the contract and no law is necessarily being broken. Right? And that's where actually then the biggest contention, human contention is about. Which then brings me to what I want to talk to you about this morning. In this age of artificial intelligence, things that are currently going on. Does anybody here know how fast information is growing every year? Guesses?
Can we guess?
Guess, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Let's guess. I don't know, every 30 seconds?
What's happening every 30 seconds? What is growing? How much?
It's doubling every 30 seconds.
Information, like new information gets...
2 years ago, Gallup came up with the research that said that an average human being manufactures or produces 1.7 megabytes of data every minute. So multiply that by 7 billion people. Every minute is how much data is being produced. But also they mentioned this, that what was interesting, there was a shift somewhere in 2015. So that when they did the research in 2017, they realized that 90% of the information that had been gathered in the world at 2017 was produced in the previous 2 years. So something happened around 2014. And right now, in the age of AI, we don't even know how fast information is growing. What that basically means is that it's going at such a fast rate that by the time that you finish your first year at the university, what you've learned in the first semester is almost out of date, or it needs to be updated. So what that tells us is that there is the rate of information that we're producing is outpacing our ability to keep up with it. So what that basically means is this, is that if you are not then having some degree of growing, at least at some pace, you're also going to be, at some point, outpaced by the growth, which means that also going to become irrelevant. Does anybody know the rate at which AI is costing jobs? What is the percentage per month? AI is costing industry almost 40% of the jobs. 40% of the jobs are going to be redundant. New jobs are coming onto the market. Now with ChatGPT and all of that, there are, for example, 5 new jobs that are fast becoming popular. The number one being a prompt engineer. Does anybody know what that is? What a prompt engineer is? Yeah, it has everything to do with your ability to instruct the AI platform to give you the information that you want. For someone like me who's in the information age, I can tell you right now, it has probably taken away almost 70% of the work that I used to do. I don't have to do the way that I used to do it anymore. And I realize that certain skills, even for me as a communicator, that I've got to now enhance so that I can take advantage of AI, because it is here to stay. And here's another thing about it, is that the developments within that space are so fast that it's even outpacing the developers themselves. One particular program had to be stopped. Do you know why? Because after they started prompting it in a language that it was not designed in. I can't remember. I think it was some Indonesian language. The AI platform itself could understand the entire language after a few prompts. And they couldn't figure out how. How does this thing all of a sudden figure out a language that it was never designed in the first place? And they had to stop because they realized that it's outpacing them. Elon Musk is concerned about the rate of AI. The chairman of Google, Pichai, is also very concerned about the rate. In fact, he said that he instructed the entire Google team to slow down the release of all the developments because they need to keep up with what's going on. But I'm not here to talk about AI. I'm actually here to talk about you as a human being and the 3 AIs that you've got to develop if you're going to keep up with the developments that are happening in the 21st century in the business space. If you don't develop those, you are in trouble. The young generation who understand these developments that are happening very quickly are going to outpace us. And there's going to be war in the boardroom. As we are trying to make ourselves relevant, and as they are getting frustrated by an inability to adapt quickly as it is currently required. So the 3 AIs, if you want to write them down, I think will be very helpful. It is something that I'm also still working on, that I'm developing with my team at the moment. And I'll go through them one by one, but I'll give them to you right now. The first one is Adaptability Intelligence. Adaptability Intelligence. And I'll talk to that just now. How crucial it is that we become adaptable as human beings. We've always been, but there's got to be an intentional strategy and a mindset that we're going to form around being adaptable. The second one is Authenticity Intelligence. And you see why I'm talking about authenticity, especially when we're talking about the age of AI. Authenticity Intelligence. And the last one is Articulation Intelligence. Not just communication, but articulation specifically, because that is going to be a distinguishing factor around whether or not you have the ability to adapt to what's going on. But let's quickly have a quick discussion around the first point. When you hear the word Adaptability Intelligence, what comes to mind? Feel free to just shoot and just, say from what you're thinking.
The ability
The ability to adapt, that's what I like about that ability. And we'll break that down again. And to adapt and when and how, right? Fantastic. Great word. Unlearning and learning again, right? You had your hand up. Sorry.
I was saying to evolve as well,
To evolve.
relevant in the here and now.
Awesome. Evolving and being relevant in the here and now. Because if you're not doing what's relevant here and now, it's not going to be relevant in the future. Because we are always premising, we are always connecting or living out our lives based on the two things. Based on what we know from the past, against what we're trying to achieve in the future, but lived out right now in the present. If you don't have a way of being able to interpret what the past is and how that translates into the present, especially against your aims in the future, then you'll find that quite a lot that you're doing right now in the present is irrelevant for the future, because it dismisses or it fails to take into consideration meaningfully what was happening in the past. Hence then the word unlearning and relearning is a crucial word. Hence then the word about what's relevant now and how is it relevant, how much of it is relevant is crucial. And that is really what adaptability is about. The first point about adaptability is the fact that we are constantly learning and becoming as human beings. But if you don't know who and what you're becoming, you're going to one day wake up and say to yourself, who the heck am I? Who's had that thing where they're asking themselves, who am I? What do I believe in? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it really what I want to be? Because in terms of the age group that I'm looking at right now, normally that's where you start asking yourself those questions. I'm not putting numbers. I'm not putting any numbers. Yeah, I could do it if it was just a few of us here, bald-headed men, but to say that right now as myself would be a risky move on my side. But if you start asking yourself those questions, do the ideas that I have, do they belong to me? Do I believe in them? Are they serving me well? Right? Are they helping me to achieve what I want? So if you don't have that ability to question what you already have against whether or not it's relevant to now, and against whether or not it's yielding for you the outcomes that you want, you will have great difficulty adapting. If you're not asking yourself those questions on a regular basis, especially if you happen to be in some kind of a leadership position where people are looking to you for the direction. Because the highest concentration of power is with you. When you cough, everybody catches a cold. And I don't think that many of us as leaders understand actually how powerful it is that we are leaders. That our mood, even the very culture of our moods, impacts the culture of the company. If you're a moody person, in the home, for example, if one of the parents is quite moody, then the kids themselves tend to be very tense around the parent, yes? They tend to worry about, are they happy today? Are they not happy today? And then kids start to really form their behavior around adapting to the behavior of the parent. And that is the same thing also with the leader. We talk about toxic cultures. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, actually, the leader, the person that determines whether the culture is toxic or not, is the one at the top. In two ways. Either they're like that or they ignore other elements which are like that and they do nothing about it. I mean, one of my favorite stories, I'm a pastor, and I'm saying this only for a story in the Bible is the story of David. David had children. One of the sons raped one of his daughters. He did nothing about it. And then the brother to the half-sister, one of the brothers decided, I'm going to take revenge on my half-brother. And he killed him. David still did nothing about it. The son went away and eventually came back, still bitter. David still did nothing about it. Eventually, the very same son, his name was Absalom. He basically took he took the kingdom away from him. Even when he found out, for example, that the son was at the gates campaigning against him, he still did nothing about it. And eventually the boy took over the company. The kingdom. But here's what happened. One of David's right-hand men, Joab, was watching. Joab saw that David is not doing anything about the situation. So when Absalom was chasing them, David said to Joab, "Don't kill my son." Guess what happened when Joab caught Absalom? He killed him. Ultimately, the very same right-hand man that he trusted, Joab, plotted a coup against David later on. And for the second time, the kingdom was almost taken away from him. And all that to say, even though he was great as a military man. He was great at conquering kingdoms. He was horrible at handling his family, and he was horrible at handling and managing the people who were close to him. And ultimately, it cost him the kingdom twice. We need to understand the power that we have at the top. That if we as leaders are not adaptable, the people are not going to be adaptable. If we continue to discount and go against everything that we don't understand and we say that it doesn't work, then we are in trouble. So what do you need to build that intelligence? First thing is observation. Observation, not being an audience, but actually being an observer. What's the difference between somebody who's an audience and an observer? Let's try and figure that out. What is the difference between an observer and an audience member?
Maybe an observer is objective and not detached, but kind of like more objective in terms of what they are seeing.
What makes them objective? That's a great point, but what makes them objective?
They don't have maybe an attachment to or like a skin in the game.
Okay. Between the audience and an observer, who has a goal in mind? Who's looking for something specific to achieve? Who's looking to learn something?
The audience, no?
The observer. Most audience are just there as just watchers, entertain me, right? It's funny, and then they laugh. It's soccer match, oh wow, and then they've got an opinion about it, but they don't really have a particular goal in mind, yes? But an observer has a particular goal in mind, and that goal is what makes them objective.
I was saying an observer is looking for something specific.
Exactly. They're intentional in their watching, and then they learn. And the second part about intelligence, then if you're an observer, then you have to identify. Identify what you're learning. All right? I have an acronym that I'm going to be sharing with you. So O is observer. The second one is identify. Identify what you're learning. And then once you've identified what you've learned, integrate it. Integrate it into your intelligence. Because if you're not integrating it into intelligence, does anybody know anything about the forgetting curve? What is the forgetting curve? Do you know what that is? Within 20 minutes of learning whatever you've learned here, you start to lose it. Up to 80% of what you would have heard this morning, by the time that you get on the highway, by the time that you finish, in fact, start having breakfast, almost 80% of it is already gone. Unless you have become intentional in identifying the things that I have said today, or that you're learning even today, they don't become meaningfully they don't get meaningfully integrated into your knowledge sphere. Maybe one day you'll be like, oh, that guy, yeah, he said that, but then you remember. But then as long as it is not integrated, it cannot be used as a tool in your knowledge. You can't use it. You gotta be intentional about it. So, observe, identify, integrate, then practice. Practice. Try out the knowledge that you have learned, the new knowledge that you have learned. Try it out. See what works. Figure out what's relevant to you and what's not relevant to you. Because if you don't figure that out, you're in trouble. Practice. That's a P. And then the last one is that then apply. Once you've applied, you've tested, you got to apply it. You have to apply the knowledge. Because then eventually, once you start applying, then you can begin the process of developing competence in that thing. And then eventually you can reach the level of proficiency in that thing. So there's a lot that I can talk about that, but that's what adaptability intelligence is. Is that be an observer, identify what you're learning, integrate what you're learning, practice what you're learning, and then apply it. And then continue with that process. Continue with the process. What have you heard? What is the one thing that stood out for you? What have you caught? What have you caught? Sorry, you know what? Anyway. Practice what you've learned. Anybody else? It's a process. Yes, it's definitely a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Right? Anybody else? You're going to forget. Learn about that forgetting curve. It's quite interesting on how do you keep yourself remembering what you have learned. Multiple ways that you can do that. One of the ways that figure out the type of learner that you are. If you're somebody who's more scientific, then you normally think more step by step, more process oriented, more logically. And if it is vague, it's hard for your mind to grasp it. You figure out. But if you're more artistic, like some of us are, we can learn from chaos. We can see the rabbit in the clouds. Some of us, and then we can listen, whether it be poetry, whether it be music. Figure out the type of learner that you are. Because if you don't figure out the type of learner that you are, you get frustrated with your learning process because you're trying to learn like somebody else, whereas your brain is not wired that way. So there's a science and the art of things. And then somewhere in between there's symmetry. There's a symmetry. Even finding your balance. For example, if you're a bit more artistic, a bit of structure can help you then to formulate your thoughts better. And if you're more scientific, a bit of artistic exploration can help you to be a bit more creative and think outside of the boxes that you've already built for yourself. Okay, second one is about authenticity intelligence. Now, the thing is this, because AI is not a human being and it works with structure, if you and I put the same instruction in the AI tool, so there's one crucial component, let me help you out, about authenticity, it's uniqueness. Uniqueness. What is it about the way that you do things, you say things, the way that you process, the way that your contribution to the world that's unique? One of my unique elements is this. I'm very linguistic. I love languages because I'm auditory. That's why you hear I'm shifting between whether you don't know whether it's an American accent or British accent or South African accent, because that's just the way that I am. And it's one of the ways that I create interest and fascination and curiosity in the way that I speak, to keep you mesmerized by my ability to articulate my thoughts from one end to the other. I learned that growing up. I saw that people are saying that a lot about me as a person. So what are people saying about you? That's unique. Let me go even deeper. What are they using you for without paying you? But they come to you all the time to come and get it from you. Ooh. Because your authenticity is the most expensive component of your currency. I don't think you guys heard me. You missed it. You missed it. You missed it. Your authenticity is the most important component of your currency. And if you don't know what it is, you will be exploited, you will be harvested, you will be undermined, and you will feel like you are not being appreciated for your worth. And if you don't know what it is, you can't use it as a tool. What's a tool again? What makes something a tool? If I'm in trouble and I've got a cup in my, is this a cup to drink or is this a weapon? So what makes something a tool? What are you using it for? So if you don't pay attention to what your uniqueness is being used for, you cannot use it as a tool to improve your currency, to negotiate your worth, to have leverage at the table of negotiation. And those that actually figure it out, you know what they're going to do? They're going to convince you that the diamonds that you have in your pocket are actually just a bunch of glasses. Broken glass, and they'll give you 1,000 rand for it. And say, hey, that useless glass you've got in your hand, give it here, I'll give you 1,000 rand. Because you don't know what it's worth. You know what you say? Oh, $1,000 for this glass? For sure, take it. And then what happens tomorrow when they may build an empire out of your glass? Are you happy? You're not happy. So I ask you again, what is authentic about you? As far as your abilities, as far as your skills, as far as the way that you do things. Why is it that when you do some things, people prefer that than when someone else does them. The same thing. If you don't know what that thing is, you are usable, exploitable, and at some point, when we're done with using you, kick you off the curb. But if you know what it is, you can develop it. You can adapt it. You can improve on it. I spoke about adaptability intelligence, authenticity intelligence, and the big one is articulation intelligence, which is your ability to really connect things and express them for the purpose. I can observe and I can take in the different components, variables of complexity in my environment. I can put them together and I can navigate that with my thinking and express them in a language that everybody, or at least most people, can understand it. So your ability to really filter through the complexity that is in your mind as you take in the complexity that is in your environment and communicate them for whatever purpose with whomever is part of who thinks that they have understood what I just said now. Give it back to me the way that you received it. Yes. Okay? The ability to connect the dots and make sense of all the different pieces of information. And then the last part is to express it. To express that very well. Who else? Give it back to me. What do you understand articulation to be based on what I just said now? Or at least whatever you know and what you think I just said now. Perfect. Processing, again, the variables of complexity, whatever components that are part of your environment, whatever you're dealing with, connecting them and expressing them for a purpose. I hope you've noticed something from all the three AIs. Central to everything is a purpose. Purpose, 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 purpose. Objective, goal, mission, target, destination. If you don't have that in mind, you have no way, again, of adapting, because what are you adapting to without knowing what to adapt for? You have no way of being authentically intelligent, because then how do you know what you know and how it applies authentically to the situation? And then lastly, as far as articulation, how do you make sense of the billions and billions of information that's in your mind without a purpose? Your intelligence is only as good as your purpose. It's only as good as what you use it for, right? Unfortunately, people who've got very high IQ, people who are very smart, can tend to have intelligence paralysis. As they analyze everything and put in and connecting information that shouldn't be connecting or that is for later. And then they have paralysis of too much information, then get easily overwhelmed, find it difficult to make a decision. They have all the models and all the reasons why something will work and why it won't. But because human beings are wired mainly to worry about what won't work because of our survival instincts, then they will tend to go on the issue of risk. And then they will minimize, they will avoid, they will delay, and they'll come up with all kinds of other things and become very procrastinating and not get anything done. Some of the smartest people in the world are the worst procrastinators. Or as somebody who doesn't really think that broadly, is like, oh, no, I want to get rich today. What do I need to do? Okay, I need to sell. Okay, let me go sell something. They're not worried about whether you're going to say no to them or not. They don't think about what it means that you're thinking they're a salesperson. All they're concerned about is who's the next person that I can sell to. And before you know it, the sales industry is one of the highest paying industries in the world and has most of the salespeople, as far as technical IQ is concerned, are not very high up there. But they are among the most successful people in the world. So the question is it the IQ or is it the purpose? Is it your degree or is it the purpose? Is it your 50 years of experience or is it the purpose? Ultimately, we're going to judge you right now in the present by what you are doing now and how it is affecting us now and potentially for the future, and not so much about what you did 30, 40, 50 years ago. You are only as relevant as you are to the future. And then lastly, articulation intelligence. How do you negotiate for yourself for what's yours? Do you have a way of simplifying? When you're looking at different people in an environment, do you know what words do you choose? Do you keep on going on in your own language that nobody else understands because it makes you feel a certain way somewhat about yourself? at the compromise and at the expense of the mission. Another part of articulation is not just about communication, but it's also about articulation of your attitude. How do you express yourself attitude-wise? Anybody heard about 10 by 10 by 10 rule? A 10 by 10 rule basically means this. At 10 meters, people are judging the way that I'm dressed, the way that I walk, the way that I conduct myself away from them. They may be fascinated and curious about who I am, solely based on how I look and how I present myself. Have you ever seen those people that from a distance, they just catch your attention? And you somehow have some kind of fascination about, I wonder who that is. Or, I don't want to find out who that is. I don't even want to know, I want to even go anywhere near them. It's 10 meters. I'm looking at you outwardly. I'm making quick judgments and assessments about who you are. And then closer to me, within 10 inches, which is about 20 centimeters, I worry about your aura. I'm worried about your attitude. Are you safe for me to be around? Are you potentially a threat? I feel. Have you ever sat down and sensed a presence behind you without seeing there, but you know that somebody is there behind you or in the room? Because we have that ability to sense an aura around us because our body is emitting energy. Because that's how we are primarily connecting with one another, is based on aura. And then the third one is the first 10 words. When you open your mouth, what is the first thing that comes out of your mouth? Do we know how quickly people lose attention or drop, for example, or the videos online? What is the timeline? Do you know how quickly they drop? About 8 seconds. If you fail to get me within 8 seconds, you're done. Biggest mistakes that people normally make is come to a boardroom meeting or you're asked to do a presentation and you're spending your first 1 minute greeting everybody and talking about how nervous you are and that you haven't done this. Like, we're not interested. Like, why are we here? Why are we here? Tell us why are you here? And we don't want to know the process that you went through. We want to know why are we here, because we're here for a purpose. We're not here to feel sorry for you. You're putting too much of an emotional burden on me to want me to feel sorry for you. I got my own people that I feel sorry for. I'm not here to now take on that energy from you. Tell me why you're here. Let's get done or get out of the way. Biggest mistakes that most people do when you do presentations, don't waste your time with too long greetings and observing protocol unless you're a politician. You know, protocol observed and all of that. You lose people. And for some of us that actually are into content marketing and that do this even as a business, we understand that the guys who are doing extremely well online are the ones that are able to catch your attention within the first 8 seconds and then keep your curiosity ongoing. If they don't, they just drop. I've had to make that adjustment because things that I talk about, for example, are quite heavy. When you're articulating yourself, what are the first 10 words? But here's the thing. You also have the last 10 words. If you stuff up the first 10 words, don't stuff up the last 10 words. At least work on your last 10 words. So with that being said, I hope this was helpful to you. What are the 3 AIs again? First one? Adaptability. Intelligence, yes. Second one? And then the last one? Articulation Intelligence.